hope you guys are ready. Yeah? Good morning. Amoud Yomi, Masechet Pesahim, Dirshu, Samech Gimel. We're in today in Samech Gimel. We're at the bottom of Samech Bet Amoud Bet. I need you to attach your seatbelts. Okay? You see the Rashi over here? I want to tell you, sometimes we're a little late in the Gemara, and I have to give myself time to prepare every day. So today, this next page, I look at it, and you see the page, I said, look, little daf, little tiny daf. Sometimes the daf goes down, it goes big, and here it's wide, here it's small and thin. So I said, okay, this is a little preparation. And then, you look at the Rashi on the side. You see the Rashi? You see the Rashi? Did you ever see a Rashi that big? I don't remember many Rashis that big. Just to explain to you that somebody told me on this daf that Rabbi Stefansky said that the art scroll on this Rashi is 2 pages. The art scroll on Rashi is 2 pages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to tell you this whole Rashi before we start the page. It's not hard. It's just I'm going to give you a summary before we start everything. Okay? Before we start everything. We are discussing, before we start the summary, just to remind you what we're discussing. We're discussing Korban Pesach. And Korban Pesach is a special halachot that you have to have intention when you are shechting the Korban Pesach. Part of the Korban Pesach is shechting the Korban Pesach. And you have to do it with the right intent. The right intent means that you're shechting it for people that can eat it. Some people can't eat it because they are not circumcised. A person who is aren cannot eat Korban Pesach. He cannot eat Korban Pesach.
He's circumcised or Jewish?
He's not circumcised, but he's Jewish. How could it be? Because sometimes either they didn't know anything about Torah, or they're Rishaim, or usually what Rashi brings down is that the family has an illness that when they lose blood, at the bris milah they die. So a guy that had, for example, lo aleinu v'alechem, a few children that passed away from a bris milah, so therefore it's a risk they don't do the brit. So let's say you have people like that, and if you have them in mind for the Korban Pesach, it's not a valid Korban Pesach. However, we said till now that Tanna Kama holds, if you're thinking for 5 people that are circumcised, 5 people that are not circumcised, it's kosher. That's what we said till now. Because it doesn't make a difference. I need to check for the guy that's kosher, even if I'm checking for the guy that's not kosher. I'm checking for the guy that's kosher. So it doesn't make a difference if this guy is yes kosher or not kosher. So far so good. And Rabbi Meir says no. Rabbi Meir says something interesting, that if you shecht for the guy, 50-50 is usually kosher with Tanna Kama. Rabbi Meir says if you shecht for the guy if your mind is thinking, I'm shechting for the guy who has a bris, and the guy who doesn't have a bris, that's kosher. But if you switch, if I'm checking for the guy that doesn't have a bris in your mind, and then you include the thought the guy that does have a bris, that's not kosher. And the Gemara doesn't understand why that is. So now I'm going to give you a whole Akdama before we read the lines of the Gemara. Once we understand this Akdama, we're going to read through the Gemara. It's going to go very quick, and the rest of the page is very easy. It's the few lines which Rashi explains them in a big arichut. There is a machloket which we spoke about before, and this is one you got to get well, okay? There is machloket Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Meir. When a person has an animal and he wants to switch its status to another animal, and it is a korban and he wants to switch it, you're not allowed to do that. Let's say I have what's called an ola. It's a certain type of korban, and this oila I want to keep it for myself. I don't want to bring it to the Beit Mikdash. Mistakenly, a person could think, which he's not allowed to do, okay, what I'm going to do is I have this sheep and I'm going to transfer the sanctity of this sheep onto this sheep. Meaning the sanctity over here will go onto this sheep, and this sheep I'm going to take it back to my house and make a barbecue. That's not allowed. As soon as you say the sanctity of this sheep goes onto this sheep, you actually made this sheep a korban as well, and they're both korban. They're both owned by the Beit Mikdash. You just made a mistake. You thought you're going to save yourself some money. You just gave double the money. And what do you have to do with that korban? Whatever you said it is. So, for example, if you're going to say if this is an oila, that means that it's a korban that usually most of it is burned. You just get the skin. This is an oila. This will be an oila as well. You got to bring them both as an oila. And how do you do that? You bring them both as an oila. You shech them. You burn them. And you get the skins. What if you say this is an oila, and this will be, you say oila shlamim? What do we do with that? It's an oila and shlamim. Now, so Rabbi Meir says, well, you can't have an oila shlamim. So whatever you said first, that's Rabbi Meir, that becomes the korban. So you said oila, this is an oila. You said oila first, the whole word that you say grabs itself on this korban. The whole thing's an oila. It doesn't make any difference what you said afterwards. It's already in the door, it's already sealed, it's already signed, it's already stamped. Shitat Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yossi says no. The fact that you said oila shlamim, it's just because you can't say at one time 2 things. Hashem, by the way, one time in the Torah it's written Zacho, and one time it says Shamot. And we say in Shabbat, and so Friday night, we say, Shamo b'zachor b'dibur echad. They were both said at one time, so the Torah is going to write them over here. One's Zachor, one's Shamar. The only one who can speak two things at one time is Hashem. A man can't. So when he says Ola Shlamim, he really means Ola Shlamim, and it's an Oila Shlamim. The problem with that is how do you bring it an oil and how do you bring it a Shlamim? You can't bring it for both. This is completely burnt and this is eaten. So what you do is you let this animal graze, you just let it chill, and eventually it's going to get sick, eventually it's going to have some moom, maybe an animal's going to bite it, maybe it's going to lose a tooth, maybe it's going to cut its lip, and then it's going to become not fit for a korban, and then you sell it, and now you have $1,000, 500 used for oila, 500 used for shlamim. That's Shitat Rabbi Yossi. Everybody got that? So far so good? So therefore, what does Rabbi Yossi say? We go with both of your words. And Rabbi Meir says we only go with oila. We go with the first word you said. Okay? That's what is the reason of Rabbi Meir? Why? Is the reason of Rabbi Meir like Rabbah says, whatever you say, that is too bad. It's done. And that means, or is it according to Abaye, the reason of Rabbi Meir is that you changed your mind. When you say oila, you meant oila. And then you change your mind to shlamim, too late. You already signed, you already stamped it. So since you changed your mind, too bad. But according to Abai, according to Abai. But according to Rava, no, I don't care if you change your mind, didn't change your mind. All it has to do is if you said it, once you said it, it's to fess the whole thing. Where will that be a nafkamina? Where will we see that in a practical difference? What if the guy didn't say, this is an oila, this is a shlamim? He came and he said, this is half oila, half shlamim. This animal, the front part will be oila, and the back part will be shlamim. That's also not possible. You can never have that. So it depends what you think. According to Rava, it's still it's still an oila. Because once you said oila, even if you meant that only the head's going to be oila and the legs are going to be shlamim, too bad, there's no such thing as just the head. So the word oila goes on the whole animal. That's Rava. And according to Abai, no. Since you're not changing your mind, we said before when you say oila shlamim, it means you change your mind. Here you're not changing your mind. It's at the same time you're thinking both things, so both things can go on it. So Abai will say that it's an oila shlamim in Shitad Rabbi Meir. I'm going to repeat that just one more time for the sake of clarity. If we're going only in Shittat Rabbi Meir, I say this animal is ola shlamim. What is it? According to Rabbi Meir, it's only an oila. Why an oila? You said oila. Once you said oila, it's oila. Okay, but what about in a case? Why is that true? Why is it? Well, let's go to another case. I'm saying instead, I say the animal is half ola, half shlamim. What will be the halakha? Says Rava, same thing. You said ola. The whole ola, the words ola go on the animal, it's an oila. And whatever qualifications and characteristics an oila has, and that's where you're going to bring it. Or do we say like Abaye? No. The reason why ola shlamim is only an oila when you said it is because you tried to change your mind. Too late. But here you're not trying to change your mind. You're actually designating both this whole animal half ola, half shlamim. So what happens then? So it's ola shlamim. That's what Abaye will say. What Rava will try to prove his point from another Gemara. And the other Gemara is talking about pigul and pigul. So now, hold this in mind, okay? And pigul is that when you're shechting an animal, in general, any korban, there's a few things you have to make sure to keep in mind. Where you will eat the meat, and when you will eat the meat. It's more strict when you will eat the meat.
That's not kavana before you shech it?
Yeah, the guy is shechting it, the kohen is shechting it, he has to have in mind. You know, there's a lot of barachot. When I write tefillin, I gotta have in mind Shem Hashem. I gotta have in mind God's name. When you're making matzah, you say, I'm doing this for the Shem Matzah Mitzvah. When you're tying tzitzis, I'm doing the Shem tzitzis. If you do it for, the guy's writing a mezuzah for art, it's pasul. It's not kosher. Now, you're never gonna know. You're gonna buy it. That's why buy from people who have Yirat Shamayim. Make sure you buy tzitzis from people who have Yirat Shamayim. It all goes in the mind. It's all happening in the mind. Same with the korban. The kohen is shechting. This animal is supposed to be eaten within Jerusalem, and it's supposed to be eaten only for 2 days. So if the guy thinks he's going to eat it in Tel Aviv, he just made it pasul. And again, the word's pasul. And pasul is less problematic. What happens is, it's not a valid korban like he did, but the guy doesn't have a karet. However, if he thinks he's going to eat it next week, so that's called a pigul, that's more problematic. And when he says pigul, what is the halacha? He got himself a karet. Okay, that's clear? So you can have one guy is shechting, one kohen shechting pigul. He's thinking he'll eat it next week. The guy's a karet. Another guy is shechting. He's thinking he's going to eat it in Tel Aviv. That's called pasul, but he doesn't have a karet. What if one guy thinks pigul and he thinks pasul? So he's shechting, and he's thinking at the same time, I'm going to eat it next week, and I'm going to eat it in Tel Aviv. What happens? Or the opposite. I'm eating pigul, I'm going to eat it. First he's thinking, I'm going to eat it next week. I'm going to eat it in Tel Aviv, and I'm going to eat it next week. So let's go that way. So what is the halakha? Rabbi Yehuda, who subscribes to Rabbi Meir, listen well, says it is only it is both. You get both averot. Let me just read that to make sure I'm just not making a mistake over here. Rabbi Yehuda, Zakran. כל שמחשבת זמן קדמה למחשבת מקום, פיגול. זמן, פיגול. וחייבים קרץ. לא שניים בדרך אחד, לא שניים. ורבנן סברה בגמר דברם נתפס. Very nice, I got it. If the person would be thinking two things, if he would be thinking that it's outside of the place, outside of the time and outside of the space at the same time, he doesn't get the problem of pigul. Pigul needs to be only pigul. To get a karet, you have to be thinking only that you're going to eat it outside of Jerusalem, outside of the allotted time. But if you're thinking also outside of the allotted space, then you won't get a pigul. And Rabbi Yehuda, who subscribes to Rabbi Meir seemingly, says if you think pigul and then you think space, pasul, you still get a pigul. Why does it seem to be? It seems to be because only the pigul is tofes. Only the pigul works. You see from here that even though when I'm shechting the animal, there's a lot of kazitim. There's a lot of pieces of meat. So it seems to be similar, like designating an animal half-half. I'm designating part, one kazait that I'm getting from the animal, I'm going to eat it tomorrow, and one kazait I'm going to eat it outside of Jerusalem. And you see that the second one outside of Jerusalem doesn't count. We only go with the first thought. So seemingly over here that we have a shita of Rabbi Meir, that we only go with the first thought, even if there's two possibilities. I have to repeat that one more time? Yeah. Okay, no, it's hard. And all this is the Rashi. When we're going to read through the words, it's going to fly through. Okay? See that big Rashi over here, Rabbi Yonatan? All what I'm saying is the big Rashi, which is basically a whole Gemara. It's a whole other page. The whole page of Gemara in this Rashi, which we're just taking one little nekuda from it to explain our Gemara. Okay, one more time. I know it's hard. I have an animal and I say, Ola Shlamim. What is it? Rabbi Meir says only Ola. Why is that true? Rabbi Meir says that. Why is that true? Rabbi says, because whatever you said first, that's it. Abaye says, it doesn't do with what you said first. It has to do with you can't change your mind. If you said it's oila, you can't change it. But if you had in mind at the same time ola and shlamim, half-half, then Rabbi Meir would say it's really half-half. Rabbi says, no, it's not true. We go with the first words, the first thing you said. I don't care what you thought.
Because of what we said yesterday, right?
Yes.
We said arel, not arel.
Exactly. That's where we're going in that mahalach. But we want to understand something over here of Rabbi Meir. So, according to Rava, we go with the first thing you said. Rava wants to prove his point. Whatever you said first, I don't care if you're thinking both things at once. I don't care if you're not changing your mind. Your first statement, that's what fits. And how do we know that's true? Because if another guy is shechting an animal, and he's thinking, at the same time, he's thinking, pigul, outside of the right time. Next week I'm going to eat it. And he's thinking right away afterwards, outside the space, we only give him pigul. And we see that outside the space, we don't care about it, because whatever you said first it counts. And here clearly it's nothing to do with change, it's not changing your mind. Here it's at the same time you're thinking both, because you can do both. You can do both. Why? Because when you shecht an animal, there's a lot of pieces of meat. So I can eat one out next week and I can eat one outside of Jerusalem. So you see that I'm thinking both possibilities, and still we only go with the first one, because we go with the first language. That's what Rava says. Okay?
And if your intention was outside of Jerusalem and then time, same rule?
No, we're going to go only with the first thing you said, according to Rabbi Meir, according to the way that Rava learns it. Okay, so now let's read that inside the words. And now we're going to change that in a second, but let's see that. Samich bet Amoud bet at the bottom of the page. Amar Rabbi Barcha Yuda. See it on the bottom of the page? Sorry, my mistake. First word in line is Tanya. 4 lines up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Tanya Acherim Omerim. Acherim say, Higdim Mulim Narini. So in your mind when you're shechting, you're thinking about the people who are circumcised. And then you think about the people who are uncircumcised. Kasher. So the guy shechting now, the Korban Pesach, he's thinking about the guy circumcised, thinking about the guy's not circumcised, it's kosher. Arelim Nemunim. But if you think about first the guy that's non-circumcised, and then the guy that's circumcised, Pasul. It is Pasul. Why is that? Ma'ishna Munin Arelim. The Kasher. Why would you say, like we said, that you have to have intent for the people that can eat the Korban Pesach? So if I'm having intent the people that are, why is the people that are circumcised and are not circumcised, why is that valid? Because the kasher, the kula ale ba'inan, to make it possible, you got to be thinking about 100% of people that are not circumcised. And here you don't have, they have 50-50. Veleka, arenim nemuni, nami kula. Nami. Well, the same thing if I think about the people that are non-circumcised and the people that are circumcised. It should be the same alachat that it should be kosher, because at the end of the day I'm thinking about people that are 50-50. The Gemara says, Leima, and this is all what I explained before, Leima, kasavre acherim, maybe acherim, which is Rabbi Meir, we call him acherim in the Gemara, ela lishrita ela lebasof, ukede rava. Now, remember I told you that hanacha, that when you're thinking about pigun, and you're thinking about Zman, so when you think about Pigun and you think about Zman, we only go with the Pigun. Well, Rava said that's a proof of Rabbi Meir that we go with the first thing the first thought you had. And therefore, if you go with the first thought you had, Damar Rava dain hi machloket. Because Rava said over there that there's still machloket Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi when you are talking about Pigun and Zman. And what are we assuming? That Shrita has only the intent at the end. I'll explain this, something else. When you are shechting an animal, there's 2 parts that you have to shecht. There is the kaneh and the veshet. And in English that's called the trachea and the esophagus. So when you're shechting the animal, you got to get both simanim. Simanim is both tubes in the neck. You got to shecht both of them. And there's certain, that's make a kosher Shrita. When we said you have to have an intention when you're shechting an animal, what part of the shechting do we need? So we're assuming at this point that you have to shecht only at the end. Only at the very end. That's meaning you have to have intent only at the end. You could start thinking about who knows what foolish things at the beginning of the shechita, but when you get to the end where that's actually finishing the job of the shechita, because if you didn't get both of the tubes, you didn't do a kosher shechita, you got to get, it comes to finishing the job up, that's when you got to have the right intention. So at that moment you're thinking 2 things. You're thinking, what are you thinking? You're thinking pigun, and you're thinking Zman, and we only give you Pigul, because we only go with your first thoughts. So the same thing, Machloket, Yidkach, Igdim Mulim, Naridim, Mulin, Chayne, Arim, no Chayne. Now we understand. So when you're shechting the animal, and you get to the end of the shrik, and you think the guy, I'm doing it for the guy that's non-circumcised, and the guy's circumcised, too bad, because we only go with your first thoughts. That's why it's possible. Lo Chayne, because that's what Rabbi Meir said, when it comes to the Korban, when you're shechting it, Pigun and Zman. Lo chayne, hikdim arenim nemunin, arenim chayne, munin no chayne. That's why it works. Amar Rabba, lo, leonam kasrei achim yeshna neshikta mitchilavad sof. One more time. I have now an animal. This animal, I'm a Kohen. This animal is a shlamim. Okay, or it's a whatever. I can only eat it within the confines of Jerusalem, and I can only eat it for 2 days. Example. So the guy's shechting it, and what happens? He thinks he's going to eat 1 kazait, he's going to eat it in Tel Aviv, and 1 kazait, he's going to eat it today in Tel Aviv, and 1 kazait he's going to eat it next week in Haifa, and 1 kazait he's going to eat it today in Tel Aviv. What do we give him? A punishment for what? Only for the first thought. We only give him for the first thought. And that makes a big difference, because if we'd include both thoughts, he wouldn't have a kares. Because in order to get the carrot for the pigul, you have to have only the thought of the pigul outside of the right time. So we only go with the first thought. So that seems to be that and that is because you're thinking 1 thing at the same time. At the end of the shechita, you're thinking 2 things, but we only go with your first thought. Same thing here, we're assuming. So Rabbi Meir says when you're shechting for the aren, and shechting for the, really if it would be 50-50, it's God. But you thought first of the aren, the guy's not circumcised. So that's it. That's what falls on your korban, and your korban is pasul. So that's what we're assuming. So that's what we're assuming, that now we just figured out also that Rabbi Meir holds that shechita is the only time you need to think about the shechita is at the end. We got over the big hump, and then the Gemara says no. Vacha b'maiskinan kion shegamar biribon. The Gemara says, no. Leolam kasrei achim yeshna shchita mitchila b'ad sof. Actually, the intention that you have to come with the korban when the shchita is at both stages. The first stage, the kaneh and the veshet. We're going for both. You got to think about the trachea and the esophagus. And you got to have both the proper intention at both times. You know what the guy had? The guy was really thinking in his mind. He's shechting for both. Ben nimunim, ben narim. He's going to check for the guy that's circumcised. He's going to check for the guy that's not circumcised. But the guy didn't have time. He's thinking the non-circumcised and the circumcised, but he didn't have time to say it. He said in his mouth, I'm checking this for the non-circumcised, and it was already finished by the time he wanted to say circumcised. לומר לימולין עד שנגמרה שחיטה בערלים. ובהפליגי דרבי מאיר סבר לא בעניין פי וליבו שווין, ורבנן סברי בעניין פי וליבו שווין. So according to Rabbi Meir, we go according to what you said. And according to Rabbi Chachamim, we go according to what you thought. So Chachamim, so what are we talking about over here? Okay, so the guy's shechting, he's thinking for both. I'm not going to complicate too much. There's something else to say in the Rashi. Basically, he's shechting what the Gemara is talking about. Shechting. He's thinking of doing it for the kosher. The people have no bris. The people have a bris. But he has to say it also. And he's saying, I'm shechting the people who have no bris. And he's already finished by the time he says bris. So what do? Rabbi Meir says, we're going to your words. What you said is what happens. And according to Chachamim, we go what you thought. You thought that for both, so it's kosher for both. The Gemara says, doesn't like that. The kasva Rabbi Meir lo ba'inan pi v'libo shavin. 1 second, you're saying according to Rabbi Meir, we go only what you say. So now you have food over here. Okay, you have a produce, and you got to give truma to the Kohen, and you got to give meiser to the Levi. So you're thinking to say truma, but you gave meiser. This will be in your mind the truma. This will be maser. What do we do with that? By the way, you can't give to the Levi before you give the Kohen. So does it become maser, or does it become truma because you're thinking it should become truma? You're thinking truma, so to become truma. By the way, it makes a big difference. I have here a lot of wheat, and I have to give some to the Kohen. And at the end, I said this is maser, but I meant truma. Does the Kohen own that, or he doesn't own that? What's enough kamina? Let's say it becomes rotten, or let's say it goes up in price, or let's say I want to change my mind and sell it and eat it and give something else. Am I allowed to change, or am I allowed to say? So here the guy's saying this is truma, but he has in mind truma, but it's really meiser. V'amar maser. Let me go to Truma Amar Meiser. Maser v'amar Truma, the opposite as well. Or she'eni nichnas lebayzeh. Or the guy's upset with somebody, he's taking a kabbalah, he's taking a decision, a neder, I'm never going into that house. Lebayzeh v'amar lezeh. But he's really thinking about house A, but he points at house B. I'm never going to that house, but he's really thinking about the other house. V'amar lezeh. Or he says, I'm never going to benefit from Moshe, but he meant Moshe, but he says Reuven. Lo amar klum. Ad shiu pi v'libo shavin. So Rabbi Meir says it's nothing. Doesn't count for nothing. You go with your mind. We don't go with your mouth. So how can you tell me here that Rabbi Meir whole thing is that you're going with your mouth and you're not going with your mind? Doesn't make sense. Amar Abaye reshed amar siman rishon nimunin, siman sheni af la'arilim. Here's what happened. The guy, so really we're going to rechange it. What does Rabbi Meir say? Rabbi Meir saying, Simon is shechting, and he's saying with his mouth, the first track, the kaneh, the trachea will be for the people that are circumcised. B'siman sheni af le'arilim, and the second will be for the circumcised and the non-circumcised. The b'siman sheni nami patiche. I'm reading it. And amar reisha. So the first part of the Mishnah, where the guy said, what did he say in the first part of the Reisha? Circumcised, non-circumcised. What does that mean, circumcised? He said, while he's shechting, the first part of the neck he's saying for the circumcised people, and the second one he's saying for the non-circumcised people. But the second, so therefore he said the circumcised and this non-circumcised, and even the second tube, he's also thinking about circumcised and not circumcised. Seifa de'amar siman rishon narinim. But the Seifa, when he said he thought about the arinim, he thought first from only the non-circumcised. And then when he continues the shech siman sheni lemulim. And the second part, he's thinking about the ones that are circumcised. The siman rishon hu de lo patka be'mulim. And so when he checked the first part of the neck, he didn't think about the people that are mulim. Ve'Rabbi Meir l'tamid amar mafligin b'chetzi matir. And Rabbi Meir holds that you can do a pigul with chetzi mati. I'll explain. When you are bringing the incense and the ketoret, you're bringing kometz and levona. Sometimes when it comes to the korbanot, you have to have a kometz and you have to levona. Different types of incenses that you have to burn. So let's say you think of one of the type, you think about it for the wrong intention. One of the type you're going to do it the wrong way. So you do pigun in one of the type. You don't have to do both. So pigun, when it exists in the korbanot for the offerings over there, does it say Chaim what it says? The bechetzi matir, right before the Mishnah. Anyways, when you have certain korbanot, you have certain. It says over here levona and kometz they have to bring. So you have to scoop things. You have to bring frankincense, and you have to have them in mind for the right intention. Pigul bekometz v'lo belevona. Belevona bekometz. I mean, Rashi can Moshe cheshev shakadrat echad al menad nechon min hashirayim nemacha. So therefore, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but basically it's two things that you have to scoop and you have to burn. So if you have, in order to make it puzzle, according to the Meir, thinking about one of them puzzle is already puzzle. But you don't have to think about both of them puzzle. So that's Shitat Rabbi Meir. So here too the same thing. The guy was shechting the animal. And the first neck, part of the neck, he's thinking only non-circumcised. And then he thinks about circumcised and non-circumcised. Too bad, you already did one part of the shechita, because the shechita is in two parts. You thought about the kaneh, the wrong intention. That's no good. Chachamim say no. So long as part of the whole shechita, it's only possible if you think about the whole thing possible. But if you think about part of it kosher, it is kosher. So that's how we explain the Mishnah. B'Rabbanan netam udamar en mafligin bechetzi mati. And according to Chachamim, we don't have a problem with chetzi mati. I'll just repeat that one more time. I know it's complicated, but here is the bottom line. Here is the recap of everything we said. A guy is now shechting korban pesach, and he's having in mind. We always said till now, he's having in mind. He has to have in mind circumcised people. If he has in mind 100% non-circumcised people, it is not a kosher korban. It's not a kosher korban pesach. The question will be if he's having in mind both. And we said always till now that if you have in mind both, that's completely kosher. There's no problem whatsoever with that. Because at the end of the day, I'm shechting for people that will actually eat it. I thought about people that won't eat it. Doesn't make a difference. I still need, these guys are still going to eat it, and I'm shechting. To get them to eat a kazayit, I have to shech the whole animal. So I'm shechting the whole animal. Even if I'm only giving a small piece of the meat, at the end of the day, imagine I want to give a guy a piece of meat, okay? I want to give him one little piece. I have to check the whole animal to give him one little kazait. So long as there's one guy that's going to eat a piece of meat, so it doesn't matter what I think. That's what we thought till now. The only problem is Rabbi Meir comes over here at the bottom of our Braita and says, no, it depends who you thought of first. If you thought of the guy that's circumcised first, and then you thought of the non-circumcised goods, that's good. But if you think about the non-circumcised, and then you thought the circumcised, that's not good. And the question is, why is that? That doesn't make sense. What does make a difference? So we answer, we're talking about one specific case. We're holding now that you have to have intent in the whole slaughtering process. The slaughtering process has two things that you have to shecht. The trachea and the esophagus. I'm saying that right? So now, and according to Chachamim, so long as you thought the proper intention in one of the two, that's a good shechita. There's no problem. So long as at one point you thought kosher people and non-kosher people, you're good to go. So it doesn't make a difference. But Rabbi Meir says no. If on one of the two you thought only for the non-circumcised, that's consistent with Rabbi Meir's opinion in different korbanot where you just made everything possible. For example, I'm checking a korban, and that's why I wanted to see what it is. That certain times I have some kometz and I have some levona. It seems to me those are different things that you're eating the leftover wheat of the kometz. So sometimes you bring a flour offering as well. So you have a kometz and you pick up the flour offering and you're allowed to eat it. So when you're thinking, and you have levona, I'm not sure about the levona, but it seems to me that either way, I have to have the right intention for those. If I have the wrong intention, so I make it possible. But I have to have the wrong intention for both or only one. Chachamim say both at the same, both. So long as one you thought good, you didn't make it possible. So the same thing here. Rabbi Meir says no, even one possible. So even if you thought about checking the trachea or the esophagus for the wrong people, you just made it possible. We'll go to the next Mishnah and we'll finish. Ashochet et ha-pesach al ha-chametz. Over velo taseh. If you're shechting, now look at pasuk please in Torah Or, lo tishchat. Torah Or Aleph, lo tishchat al chametz dam zivchi. The pasuk is very interesting. It says you cannot shech the korban pesach on the 14th of Nisan if you are still in the possession of chametz. So don't forget. Now the 14th of Nisan has two parts: has the night and has the day. At the night time, you have to do b'dikat chametz and you have to burn your chametz, like you do in your house. You check for the chametz at the night on the 14th of Pesach. The next day you go to the fire and you burn it. Only after you burn it, when do we burn it in the morning? And then you would go to the Beit HaMikdash and bring the korban Pesach. That's the regular seder. So check it, burn it, and then go to the korban Pesach. The pasuk says, "Do not shech the korban Pesach when you still have chametz in your possession." At Samech Gimel, Amoud Aleph at the Mishnah.
Yeah,
Torah's, yes, you do have it. It's in the margin, either the right or left margin, and it's bringing all the. It's you can have Aleph Bet Gimel over there someplace, and it's just quoting psukim. You know, no, maybe it's at all. Can I see your Gemara? Can I see your Gemara? Some old versions don't have it, but I thought you better knew. Huh? Yes, it looks new, but the question is it new?
That's okay. Nothing's got the cost.
2023. It is pretty new. I'm surprised it doesn't have it. Maybe they skipped it because they were out of place. Either way, I'm telling you now, Al-Kha. You have a mitzvah not to own chametz, to burn your chametz in the morning of the 14th. The question is, if you didn't do that, well, you have one avirah of owning chametz. You have one avirah of owning chametz erev Pesach. The second is, if you have another avirah, if you shecht your korban Pesach while you still on the chametz, you have another lo taseh. That's what the pasuk says. Lo tishchat al chametz dam zivchi. V'lo yanim baboker zevach chag Pesach. You cannot shecht the korban Pesach while you own chametz. So now we read our Mishnah again. Ashochet et Pesach al chametz doesn't mean that you put the korban on top of bread. You own chametz. You own chametz while you're shechting it. You aver belo taseh. That's a separate avirah. If you're going to count the 613 mitzvot in the Rambam, you're going to find one of them is that you cannot shecht the korban Pesach while you still own chametz. Lo taseh. Rabbi Yehuda mer afa tamid. And Rabbi Yehuda says even if you're shechting the tamid, don't forget that the tamid is also in the afternoon of Erev Pesach. It's at the end, right? So what do we say? The whole beginning of the parak. You come in the afternoon of Erev Pesach and you start checking all the korban Pesach. At the end of all that, we bring the korban tamid. So you bring. Oh, my mistake. The korban tamid is before. So even when what is Erev Pesach? What's the halacha? First we bring the korban tamid, then we bring all the korban Pesach. So here we're saying the pasuk says if you own chametz on korban Pesach, you didn't have enough. But actually no. Says the Rabbi Yehuda, even if the tamid is being brought, well, people still own chametz. Afa tamid. Rabbi Shimon omer a Pesach be'arba'asar lishmo chaya. So if you're shechting the korban Pesach for the intent of the korban Pesach on the 14th of Nisan, that's where you have an avirah because it's a kosher korban Pesach. V'shelo lishmo patur. But like we said a few times, if you bring your korban Pesach and for whatever reason you mix up and you're thinking about shechting it for a different reason, you're shechting it for shlamim on the day of Pesach, it's not a kosher korban Pesach. So therefore you didn't do the avirah of shechting korban Pesach while you own chametz. בשעה כל הזבחים, בין לשמו, בין שלא לשמו, פטור. I missed something. הפסח, רבי שמעון, הפסח ב14 לשמו חיה, very nice. So if it's going, but it's שלא לשמו, פטור. But if it's not, ושעה כל הזבחים, all on the, any other korbanot that you can bring on that afternoon, the 14th, בין לשמו, בין שלא לשמן, פטור. Okay, we have to see why the Gemara is going to explain the wall is. All the other korbanot you're shechting in that afternoon, whether you do them for the right intent, the wrong intent, and you own chametz, you're patur. Ubimoed lishmo patur, shelo lishmo chaya. But during the Chag, not on Erev Pesach, if you're shechting any korban that you own for bimoed lishmo, you're doing it lishmo l'shem, whatever proper intent of that korban, patur, you're patur. Shelo lishmo chaya. But if it's not for the right intention of that korban, it is chayiv. Ushakol zavachim. My mistake. One more time. Bamoed, lishmo, the korban Pesach. Bamoed, lishmo patur. Because if you're bringing korban Pesach after the right day, it's not a korban Pesach. So if you're bringing your korban Pesach after the 14th, it turns out to shlamim. And if you're bringing it on the days of Chol HaMoed, if you're shechting it, it's not a korban Pesach. It's a shlamim. So if you're shechting it for the intended korban Pesach, it's nothing. Therefore, if you own chametz, it's patur. Shelo lishmo chayav. But if you're bringing it for a shlamim, and that's really what it is. So now you bring a shlamim and you own chametz, you didn't have avirah. Shakor azvachim, but all the other korbanot during the Chag ben nishman ben shelo nishman chayav. So now all the other korbanot that you're bringing, there's another rule that if you make a mistake on a different type of korban, except korban Pesach, if you make a mistake on the korban, actually it's a kosher korban. Just you didn't do your mitzvah. So it's actually a real korban, in yon chametz, it's chayav. Chutz min chatat, only exception will be the chatat. The chatat is, the chatat is you have to have the right intention like the korban Pesach. Shatol shelo lishma, therefore you will be patur because it's not a real korban. The bottom line is, what we just said over here, according to this opinion, is that if you're shechting a kosher korban during the Pesach days and you own chametz, you did an extra avera of owning chametz while you're shechting the korban. That's basically what you said.
The korban is okay?
Yes, the korban is okay. You just did an avera that you shechted, that you have chametz. Just read one more small thing. Amar b'Shimon ben Akish, le'olam enu chayav ad she'eh chametz de'shochet or de'zorek. I turn the page. What did we just say? The guy's shechting korban Pesach. Now don't forget, there could be 50 people signed up for this korban Pesach. So when we say that somebody owns chametz and he did an avera, who are we talking about? Says Resh Lakish, it has to be either the guy shechting or the guy sprinkling the blood, and he owns the chametz and he's in the azara. The guy is there. The whole problem is to be in the vicinity. But another kid, the teenager sleeping at home, he's not showing up for the shchita. He's just going to get his meat. If he owns chametz, it's no problem. That's not the avera on the guy that is shechting. And even maybe for him it's not an avera. Rabbi Yochanan amar afal pi she'enu b'azara. And Rabbi Yochanan says no. Even if the guy is not here, I wonder if it says over there the chametz is with him or the guy's here. If the guy is not here,
Even though the chametz is not with
and the guy has to have a chametz. He has to have a sandwich. So we're only going to be chayiv if it's the shochet or the zorek, and the guy has his bislis in his pocket. If he has his cookie in his pocket,
Not in his home.
not his home. If he has the bislis in his house, he's not an avira. The problem is you're shechting in the Beit Mikdash with your chametz. We'll continue tomorrow. Chazak u'baruch. Wow.